Yeah, we're ready. No, it's take time, isn't it? You ready, Chris?
Yes.
Right, evacuation procedure. Fire drill is not expected, and there's nobody that doesn't know the evacuation procedure anyway, so is everybody alright if I skip past that? We know to get out and go over to the bank. Apologies received, Shirley.
I've received apologies from Councillor Tandy.
And I received apologies from Councillor Elliott and Councillor Pomfret is substituted.
Yep. Nothing else? Okay. Minutes. Is everybody okay for signing minutes from the last meeting? Have we got any of this? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Has anyone got any other interests apart from what's listed? No. Okay, good. Right, just to remind everybody that it will be getting recorded, and can all members switch their phones to silence or vibrate, please. Public consultation, we've not received
Haven't
any.
received any.
Okay. 6, monitoring of the ground maintenance contract.
It's me, Chair.
Over to you, Paul.
Firstly, I'd like to introduce, you have met Paul and Barry before. This is Dean Harrison, who's the manager now of the Nuneaton contract as of the 1st of April. Okay, and Paul's coming along because he's going to give a demonstration. We talked about Glendale Live at the last scrutiny. It's moved on. It's ready to go. It's going to go live as of next Tuesday. And Paul's going to give a demonstration of it in action, I hope.
Yeah.
So and these guys are obviously here to answer any questions you may have. With regard to the report, I'm going to skip over it pretty quickly. Not skip over it, that sounded really rude. Skip over it pretty quickly because there's not a lot happened between November and now, but I'll just pick out a couple of highlights if I may. The winter's seen a lot of tree related. Basically, we've had a winter that's been cold, wet and stormy. I don't have to tell you that, you've all experienced it. That's caused a lot of tree related issues. We've removed a number of trees across the borough and had to deal with a lot of trees that have either come down, a lot of storm damage, etc. As well as that, well, not me personally, but we've worked with Glendale. They have made concerted efforts to do a lot of work on shrub reduction across the whole of the borough, contracts 1, 2 and 3. Some beds have been removed in various locations where they are troublesome, and we will continue to look at those troublesome beds as we go forward. Hopefully that's put us in good stead for this coming season, where we had a lot of complaints last year in regard to excess growth, particularly on housing sites, and I think the work we've done now will enable us to manage that going forward, enable Glendale to manage it better, we're coming from a better starting point, so that's where we are with that. Weed treatment of obstacles has started in earnest. I've been out on site today and had a look at some work that's being done. They're on the second or third, in some cases the third spray of the year. It is weather dependent. I know we've had a lot of rain, a lot of cold weather, and that has impacted on this. It's impacted on a lot of work that we have to do, but it has meant that grass cutting has started late because we couldn't get on sites. Which has been a bit, it's been two-pronged. One, it's allowed the winter works to be undertaken nearly to completion, and also additional added value in regard to to shrub bed works. Grass cutting, we didn't stop until the end of November nearly, maybe even into December in some cases. Reconvened in February, but obviously the cold curtailed that, and they've started in earnest in this last week on grass verge cutting. But the cold weather and the wet weather is kind of having an impact on that as well. We've done a lot of footway and roadway resurfacing across many sites, and that's still ongoing. We're still on the dry beds now, and the ironic, it's definitely not dry, it's very wet. But we're putting new footways in across there. We've done a lot of tarmac works. We've replaced a lot of bins, and we're in the process of replacing a lot more bins that have been damaged, broken. Not new bins, but bins that have been damaged or removed through vandalism, etc. Also, I work in the cemeteries, across all of our cemeteries actually, created a little burial area in Attleborough Cemetery. Completed the burial area, new burial area in Ocean Road. And we've done works in Coventry Road Cemetery and Stocking Ford Cemetery, tidying areas up that were problematical due to underground conditions. That's a pretty real rough look at what's happening over the winter. Glendale Alive, it'll be, as I said at the beginning, it's going to be fully rolled out in next week, and Paul is going to give a full demonstration, or a demonstration of type of that. So I don't know if you want Paul to give that demonstration and then ask any questions you may have, Chair. I don't know how you want to do that.
Should we ask questions of Paul now and then ask questions of the other Paul?
I haven't finished yet, by the way. I just thought I'd. Sorry, I don't know whether you want to. If that's how you want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's take a more than fresh.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. In overview, formal areas have been well in excess of 85%, and they're 81, 85%, and against the base of 85. And we have been monitoring over 25 sites a month, well in excess of that. Probably more like 40 and 50 sites a month. We've done a lot of monitoring on our formal sites. Informal sites, we've done a lot of monitoring on those sites as well, and they have been steadily improving, 53 to 60% across October through January. That has been impacted on by the couldn't collect, was late, but I know you've took steps for next year to have that improved, and I think if you ask Barry the question on that, he will give you an answer on what that. And we met on Tuesday with the MD from Glendale. He came to see us, and they are committed to ensure that the inputs they put in will see that those scores improve as the year goes on. And we will continue to monitor that very closely to ensure that happens. Christmas satisfaction. Yeah, customer feedback, customer satisfaction. As we reported at previous scrutiny panels, we continue to send the satisfaction forms out. And I know Councillor Grant indicated last time you'd like. I'm sure I sent you a copy.
I never saw it.
Did you know? I did send one through.
Well, I don't remember receiving one.
Okay.
You very well may have, but I don't remember receiving
So we did send them out. We continue to get zero responses, and when we met with Glendale on Tuesday, we saw a list of where they've been sending them out, and they're putting out at least 10 a week at various locations, and we're getting none of those back either. So I'm going to, controversially, and you may feel as members, we're going to make a suggestion, because we're not getting them back, we've suggested putting a rider onto these forms to say if we don't get them back, that because we said we give a free pay envelope with them, that if people aren't minded to send them back, that we count that as somebody's been satisfied with the service, and that way, if somebody is sending something back, they obviously got something to say they're not happy with. We've got to have some way of counting these, otherwise it's a folly. It's costing council money to send these things out. So that's a suggestion. You may want to discuss that after. And really, that's it in piece. Chair?
Yeah.
Let's do rectifications.
Oh, I do apologise, because there is a back page. I'm sorry about that, thank you, Phil. Rectifications across all areas October to February were 18. Majority of those were to do with path clearances and curtain remove on informal areas, which I've alluded to previously, and that's why the scores are reflected as low on informal monitoring. I'm sure Barry will kind of explain what they're going to do going forward in regard to informal areas. Thank you, Phil. Sorry, Chair.
How do you want to do? Do you want to ask Paul questions now, then listen to the presentation of Glendale, or should we have it all at once and then save our questions till the end?
I'd like a few questions now whilst I've remembered them.
Can't like them now, Keith?
I can't read my
Come on
writing.
then.
That's the problem.
Come on then, Keith.
There is some improvement, and some of the bits being obviously got an easy year. A couple of things I want to comment on though. One is we've planted 28 trees, I think, and chopped down well over 100. And we kept saying, and it's been asked at full council about this planting trees, and we keep saying we're going to plant 2 for every 1 chopped down. So that needs to be caught up with, seriously.
Can I respond to that? Or?
And the other point I just had was cemeteries, very waterlogged. There's lots of comment on social media, people contacting councils about it. Obviously, it's a good time for water at the moment, but is there actually any plans to improve the drainage at like Oaston Road and things? And the final point was, when the Glendale come on the state walkabouts, which they very occasionally do, it's really helpful. So it'd be good to make sure that happens at least once a year, one of the 4 state walkabouts, and preferably make sure we know about it so we get the issues ready.
Oh, sorry, and I have to apologise for putting across. Planting trees, and we have explained this to you, Keith, previously. We have a relatively, in fact, almost minuscule budget in regard to the planting of trees. It's just over £2,000 a year. We have had, and that is an aspiration to plant 2 trees to everyone. From a council perspective, it only allows us to plant about 25 to 28 trees per year because we're planting standard trees. We are looking at and working with developers on off-site mitigation on all these new development plots, so we can plant additional trees on our sites. Matt Crosley, the countryside officer with responsibility for that, is working with the developers and undertaking that going forward. We're also, obviously, on a lot of these development plots, we're planting literally hundreds of trees. I can't give you exact numbers, but there are more trees going in than there are coming out. We're just not planting 2 for 1. We're going to plant 20 odd trees unless we can get some Section 106 money or some capital money to do a large scale plant. So that's the answer with regard to that. Sevens waterlogs, yeah, it's been identified as a problem. I met a member of the public today on that very matter. This isn't something for Glendale really, it's a general thing for Ground. It is a problem. The water table was very high. Water table was very high everywhere. And in fact, it's so high that Glendale aren't able to currently dig graves with machine. They're having to dig graves by hand because the collapsing in is a safety element. The collapsing as the digging, the water table is right. We're at fuel capacity. And the problem at Oaston Road is, it's not a problem that's gone away, it's a problem that's been there for several years. There's nowhere, we can't drain directly to an outfall because we'd potentially be polluting an outfall. So we can't do that, we're not allowed to do that. So we've got to look at some of the forms and manner in which we can somehow collect that water and take it away from the graves that there is. We've got limited space, so you could create a pond, could create a large sump. Well, there's lots of things we could do, and that's something we're going to have to look at in the next couple of months.
And you know how much water trees drink, so planting of trees is a...
Point made.
Wouldn't want a tree growing through more growth first.
State walk.
Estate walkabouts, we do, that you do occasionally visit. I don't know if you want to speak. Sorry, I didn't.
No, I mean, basically the policy at the moment is, provided we've got the information in time, is one of our supervisors or managers to attend every one. Because that way we get the feedback quicker, and if there are issues, we can deal with them quicker as well, if we're aware of them.
So you're not being asked, that's the problem with those.
No, okay, not been
No,
happening full time.
the estate walkabouts will cover when we come to Glendale Live, don't you?
Yeah.
Because that does cover estate walkabouts.
Well,
Yeah, well,
sorry, Chair. When I get informed of an estate walkabout, I pass it on to these guys. We don't always get to know where the estate walkabouts are.
I don't always get informed.
So that's,
yeah,
there is a point.
That's an internal communication
That's an internal
issue we'll need to
communication
talk
issue.
to.
yeah, so we just had to swap around with housing officers anyway.
Indeed.
Chair, thank you. On the point of Ouston Road, I can remember when we had quite a detailed discussion on cemeteries in the borough, and I thought Ouston Road was at capacity, but yet you mentioned that you have freed up some new access. How did that happen?
We removed the property
Oh,
on the front, and we also removed what was the old council depot as well. So we've cleared the land at the front of the site, and it's freed up space for many hundreds of cremation plots, and probably about 6 to 8 years additional burial space. Let's put it that way. Can't give exact plot numbers.
so that would have, how many plots are we talking
I
about?
can't tell you exactly. Hundreds, literally several
Really?
hundreds. Yeah,
Really?
several hundreds of plots.
That makes a difference. Yeah. Thank you.
Julie?
Paul, Marston Lane Cemetery, what are you doing about the water there? With the graves?
Have you had an indication of a problem
Well,
with that?
Well, somebody was saying that they are flooding there.
It's always flooded, Councillor. There is a layer of sand runs straight through the middle of it. The water table, it just gushes in from the side. We can't put drainage into there. It's a physical impossibility because there's nowhere to drain it to. We could put a big sump in the corner. This is a discussion we had with our engineers a couple of weeks ago, but as it fills up, and it fills up that quickly, it will just backfill up the cemetery. These guys are having to dig very carefully, shore them properly, actually bore them as they go. It's more problematic, and they pump them, and it's a problem we've always had. They pump them up to 5 or 10 minutes before somebody arrives. They literally place the coffin in the base, and they backfill. And that was happening 30 years ago when I was digging the graves. So it's not a new situation at Marston Lane. It is weather dependent, and obviously worse in wet winters. And we've just had a pretty wet period. I wouldn't say we've had a wet winter, we've had a pretty wet period. So as it's and we have had a customer inquiry in regard to not say flooding, but water moving across the hard surface onto her grave, and we are looking at doing something to alleviate that for that one particular resident.
Thank you.
Margaret?
Thank you, Chair. Paul, I'm not clear, in the context of monitoring performance,
Yeah.
can you tell me what informal and informal means?
Informal and formal.
Yes.
Sorry.
Difference
Yeah.
between
Yeah, what's the difference between formal and informal? Right.
Yeah.
Formal areas are parks, Riversley Park, for instance.
Oh, right.
An informal area is we call it a wild space.
Right.
It's
Whittle Park.
less formally maintained, should put it best way. It could be cut once a year in the main. It's an area got a lot of ponds on them. Something like Wickerford Park, for instance, is a good example. Thornhill Farm Pond, where you've got a lake and you've got unmaintained grass. It's a different experience if you were to visit that site as you would on a formal area where you play football or cricket or go out to run about. So it's just a different form of open space.
Being new to this
Yes.
committee, I thought the formal and informal referred to the monitoring.
Ah, no, I'm
of the
right.
area.
I understand. Sorry,
No,
sorry.
no,
I do apologise. Yeah.
my confusion.
So it's just a different type of site.
Right. I thought it was a different approach of monitoring. Thank you.
Well, from the countryside officers, it's the scruffy side and the neat side.
Scruffy sides for the nature too.
It is, yeah.
For nature,
Thank
isn't it?
you.
'Cause
Biodiversity.
Just to pick up on your, when you ask developers to, can you just explain, I understand a bit, can you just explain where in the pecking order parks comes So you've got like people that ask for things within the council come at the top. Like,
Well, because we're asking for, we're not SIL, we're not using SIL, we're using Section 106. We've got developed a pretty robust argument for an amount of money per property based on need. I think it's 1,800, but it might be £2,000 per property per development. So we are, and that looks at capital investment, it looks at infrastructure, it looks at maintenance going forward. And we've, just give you an example, I think we've grossed, it's future, it's not now, we haven't had any money in yet, we've had 1 or 2 pots of money, but we're looking at a couple of 2.5 million of future investment in our parks going forward. And that can be, some of it's on existing sites, but it's got to be related to the development, and we can only ask for, as you're aware, we can only ask for pooling, I think 5 times, we can ask for the same thing. So, but we are trying to future-proof, and we've got an officer who's practically working full-time on ensuring that not only do we give comments on existing landscape and how the development will fit into that landscape, but also the money that will enable that to that site to develop with good facilities and linking to what is there.
Yeah, point of really trying to make, so developers don't look upon parks and that as something they won't really give money to, do they?
No, they don't, but we are, our open space strategy and other strategies we have in place have enabled us to have that robust defence and argument when we go sitting with developers and negotiate where we sit, as does Kevin Hollis with sport and recreation.
Okay. Anybody got anything else for Paul? Okay then, what up, Paul?
What we've done with Glendale Live, obviously we're going sort of properly fully live version as of sort of April the 1st, but to make sure it's sort of been working and sort of the systems are going through okay with the handsets the guys use. For the last couple of months we've been using them like the bin rounds and the gate locking just to make sure it works. So the information we've got here is actual live information of what we've been using.
And if I could just add something to that, we haven't been trained on this. We haven't yet, but I'm going to see Paul next Thursday. He's going to run me through this, and it won't be available to the general public or members, but I will have access to this, as officers will have access to this management information. So if members need information, and or member of the public requires information, it's live. I can give that information to you, because I can tell you where they're going to be, where they've been, if there's been any problems. I'll have that, instead of me having to make a phone call, I should be able to go on here, log on. I'm not right here, aren't I? I should be able to log on and identify it. But it also gives the management structure at Glendale, the MD for instance, and the regional directors, information of where things are going wrong as well. Because the best in the world, not everything's going to be perfect, and there will be times where things do go wrong. But this, I believe, will be answer a lot of the questions that we've been missing over the last couple of years. We've got a final piece of the jigsaw, if you like.
So there'll be a webcam in the bin at Sandon Park. So
sorry if you've got back to me, if you can all hear me. It's okay. Okay, so Glendale Live, all our teams as they will be going out, so all the mowing teams, individual mowing teams will have a smartphone on their team. On that smartphone will be uploaded their route for that day and for the next few days, and if anything's outstanding, that will also still be on the handset. As they go through their route for the day, they'll be able to mark on that handset completed, incomplete, if there's any issues, wet sites, obstacles in the way. As they input that data, it comes into our system, we can log on our system in the office, and again Paul will be able to do exactly the same, and he'll be able to see where we're at. The monitoring side of it is actually really quite useful. As you can see On the top line there, I've highlighted 5th of March through till the 29th of March, and what it's actually brought up is this set of information highlighted here. So as you can see, these are the teams that we've got in progress at the moment who are actually using the handsets. I'm not trying to hide the red one, honestly. So you can see there the list of teams, they've been using them quite a few months. And you can see on the left hand side in the highlighted in blue, total number of schedules. Now that's not total number of sites, that's total number of times they visit a bin, whether it be a dog bin or a litter bin. On the right hand side in the blue, where there's any issues have been raised, so maybe a bin's been vandalised, maybe they've not had access to the site. Or it might be that there's been fly tipping at the site that they've highlighted as well. Going further down, you'll see there is one, like I said, highlighted in red, which I have not hidden deliberately. There is a team, complex mowing team. First one went out this week, went out on yesterday and today, I was thinking it was Friday then, sorry. You can see on the left hand side 3 sites that they had to cover. 2 issues raised on that site, which is why the percentage is brought right down. If I click on those number 2 there, it actually brings up, I did it earlier because I've got no internet at the moment, it comes up with this site, it comes up with where the issues are. And if we scroll down to those there, it'll actually see, these ones were highlighted from the security team who do the gate locking. And you can see there, it's come across Heckley Field car park on the 23rd of March. They were unable to complete it. It's not going to let me the picture. Unable to complete because there was a car, and you can see there is a little post-it picture there of the vehicle in the car park. This is the same for all our mowing teams. So if you've got a mowing team out and they're unable to access a site, they'll be able to take a picture. If the site's too wet, again, take a picture. If at any time they can't complete anything, they have to take a picture, which is automatically uploaded to the system. Going back to the charts there then, so if we scroll down a little further.
Can I just, I'm not going to do the question, Paul, just to give how this will be really helpful is that we often get criticised by members of the public for not closing gates. We often get, Paul's Land is a really good example. There's a gentleman there who, I won't mention his name, I nearly said his name there, but he constantly calls us. But there's always constantly cars in the car park. You can't lock them in because we'll be to and fro. So there's a big problem there. And there's also a really good example of the grass cutting, because I contacted Dean today and said, if you haven't cut an area, it's Verona Close. Because there's regular complaints there that doesn't get cut. Well, there's a gentleman there, and unbeknown to us, who's building an extension of his property. He's got his vehicles parked all over the grass entrance. Well, I wouldn't know that, so we're going to actually make a little visit on Tuesday to find out whether he's got a licence. So it's going to bring up other beneficial issues to the council as well. So it's not only useful for management in that way. You can inform the members of the public, but it also helps us maybe enforcement in other areas as well.
The thing with it as well, you can't just say, no, I've not done it. You have to take a photograph. Yeah. They won't let you move on otherwise. So
the only time you don't take a photograph is if it's a complete site. Any other reason you have to take a photograph of some sort? Sorry.
Yeah, just as an observation, I noticed that on the list where it had about 6 or 7 items that couldn't be completed for various reasons.
Can we pop back to it?
Yeah, if you go back to that. I noticed that the very top one has no pictures, no sort of tag attached.
I'm not sure why that one's not got a picture, and I'm going to have to find out, to be honest.
But does that have any information attached? Because surely if they got unable to complete and they don't give a reason, then
that's something that we need to pick up on. Exactly, absolutely. There should be somewhere.
There's another field somewhere which I can't find. It's probably off the side of the page somewhere, which should have there's a text box that they can fill in as well.
I believe we just saw one of those. Is there one attached to that one?
I don't like using this Google Chrome, I'm afraid. Let me just...
On the screen.
It's not showing me. Yeah, but it should, like you say, it should have a photograph. That's something we've got to work out why the handset's letting them not well,
Yeah, because
to deal with
surely,
it.
you know, you
There
should be
should
able
be a
to at
photograph.
least an explanation. If
Absolutely,
not a photograph.
and more and text if as well.
So that's something that can be worked on.
It is, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Paul, can I ask?
Sure, of course.
Obviously, this is something that's very, very new to
Mhm.
your crews,
Yep.
going out and so on. I mean, how are they handling it? Because there
Very
could be,
well.
could be
Very
an
well.
element of control, a big brother and what have
It
you.
is,
and so
no,
on.
to be fair, we've had one or
You know.
two people who've been a little like that, but to be fair, they are, don't upset anybody, they're of an older generation who don't have smartphones.
Mhm.
So they found it a little bit more difficult to, sorry,
Yeah.
a little bit more difficult
So, yeah.
to manage their way through it.
Okay.
But certainly the young men, certainly our teams are very, very, you know, give them 5 minutes on it, go a few examples. Generally when I give an example, I'll show them sat in my office, you've got to take a photograph of my mug again,
Mhm.
and then show them on the computer, look, it's straight up there.
Right.
Some of the older gentlemen that we have do struggle with it. We just work with them a little bit, Tom, and they do get to it, yeah.
Can I ask Paul, would this be beneficial then? You know how I pass on complaints to you? Would you be able to access that then, that quickly?
I should be able- I should be able
And
to-
get back to me?
I should be able to
so
I get straight back to you, Chris.
I know you do.
You should be able to shoot. You should be able to.
With accurate information. For instance, if the
Yes.
Bedworth Residents
Exactly,
Association would ask me a
yes.
question, I could say, yeah, they've been on X day, or they've been on Y
Yes.
day,
Or they're
or
coming
why they
tomorrow.
haven't been on X or Y day, and or when they're due.
Yeah, and that would be really beneficial.
This is a very similar setup to actually the schedules that are on the system. It tells you the site, it tells you the day that they're due, it tells you whether it's complete, and if it isn't, why it's not complete. But it will tell you when it's due. So if it's not due for a couple of days, it should have a date against it as to actually what day they're actually due. And you know, like you said, if you contacted Paul, he should be able to log on and actually access that
Excellent.
and say, oh, 2 days time they should
You
be
are.
there. Or if we've had delays, then that should be available as well. Just going back to the charts.
Can I ask you a question? Have you rolled this out on any other of your contracts?
Oh, many contracts, yes.
So-
We're not the first contract by any
right,
stretch of
thank you.
imagination, no.
So we know you know the history.
And
now.
we're probably one of the biggest that have had it, which is why it's taken a little bit longer.
It's so diverse.
So many
The
teams.
kind of contract we are here, where if it's a housing contract, it's just grass and shrubs or whatever.
Yeah.
But here, eventually it will come.
Multitask.
Yeah.
And it is written into the contract, the next grounds maintenance contract, 2019. It's not just a say Glendale Live, it can't say that, but it does actually say within it they need to have a system, an electronic management system, as part of their day-to-day working. So it is written in. It wasn't written into this contract, so to be fair, because you've introduced it in other contracts, the benefits have been seen by Barry and the divisional director, and so they've introduced it as a
What
as
we
a
are
tool.
developing and will be available in the future is like a microsite, so residents can actually log on themselves, and that's being developed at the moment. So, and that should hopefully stop even more sort of phone calls to people who look on themselves. Yeah, it's going to be cut in 2 days' time.
We have.
No, hold on a minute. Can we let Paul get through this first?
Sorry.
Then we'll ask questions at the end. That is what we said.
So again, just moving down the page here, again, it just tells you how our teams are progressing. I listed team 1 on the top there. He actually completed more than he should have done on Monday and Tuesday, which gave him time on Thursday and Friday to actually visit more sites and do more litter picking. It just shows us progress through the week. Scrolling down a little further, it shows a nice little flow diagram there of how we are actually, I think it's the darker line is how many completed schedules against the lighter line, which should be showing us where we're supposed to be, just as comparative. And then finally, at the bottom here, we have a couple of pie charts. So I can click on these pie charts, and I believe Paul will be able to do exactly the same. So the red one there, this is why on the other page we've got the gate locking. If you look on the little left-hand pie chart, the little red section, highlighted there, there's a link at the bottom below it, which takes us back to the other page where we're seeing the gate locking issues. So you can see from that how little uncompleted, not required, there'll be a few not required. I think the not required on there at the moment is the Bowling Green gate and Miners Welfare Park out of season. Okay. It tells you again the types of issues that we've been having, obstacles being the main one. most probably cars in car parks on the types of information that's up there at the moment. Again, all the teams have these handsets. If they can't complete something because there's an obstacle in the way, it stays on handset for a few days. So if they are actually, for example, maybe there's an access issue, somebody's parked on the grass verge, if they're going that direction the following day and they can complete it, they can actually go back on handset the following day, the day after that, and complete that work, and it will then drop off the handset. They have 5 days worth of work uploaded at any one time, so if they're coming on a Monday, they've got the whole week's worth in there. So if they're on a complex mowing, for example, they get to a site, it's too wet, they can ignore that site, move on to the next one. 2 or 3 days later, they can actually go back to it and complete it. But if they do go the first time, it's raised as an issue because they can't complete it. We can look on the system, we can find the photographs, and we can pass that on to residents if they're concerned that we've passed them by.
Okay, wonderful.
I don't mind.
Right, open to questions.
Thank you for that.
Just a couple of questions coming from the presentation. I note, Paul, that you said that we're writing into the 2019 contract that there should be a mobile device set up. Do we know if any of the likely competitors or people applying do have this sort of software?
They do. It's something.
So it's a standard.
It is something standard and readily available information.
Okay.
And it'll be their own manifestation of that.
Of course,
Yeah.
but the same basic
Yeah.
features most likely. And secondly, again, this is something that Glendale might be able to answer. Are there any plans to roll out a version of the app for residents, perhaps users, to make things easier for them to install?
Probably not within this contract period, purely because of the time span left on it. So.
No, of course, and being a definitely more than just need to embed in your contract. I was just wondering if there was something in the works.
I know, on some of the contracts we already have that, but because of the size of the contract, the amount of work on it, it's not as quick as easy to do. On a housing contract, there's so little few jobs, it's easy to put that in and it makes more sense.
So you have different versions of this software for different contracts?
Yeah.
I assume. And would the difficulties of going on to a type of software that's used by one of the ones that do have a resident version of the app, would that be expensive to switch over, or?
It's not particularly about, it's about time to do it more than anything else. Because the Nuneaton contract is probably the most diverse contract the company have, because there aren't that many contracts like this anymore that has the full scope of work that we cover, cemeteries, Christmas lights, and the rest of it. That's purely the reason. It's more the elements of work rather than the cost.
There is the Glendale Live local, as they call it, which is the website that local people can log on to and can see when their teams are due to cut the grass on the local verges. But it's not down as an app so much as just a website that they can access. It's
Okay,
not something
so
we haven't rolled that until we've got this right.
So just thinking with grass cutting season coming up, if there was a website that I could direct people to let them know what's happening in the area.
Yeah,
So it would be back Glendale Live.
long-term plan.
That's the, I mean, certainly, if thankfully we were here in sort of 18 months' time, and that would certainly be part of it. We'd have time to do it by then. But obviously, as we're sort of moving at the moment, we need everything put on for what we've currently got. We've got the Christmas decorations and everything coming up later this year. That'll all be on Glendale Live as well. So we need to get them sort of bits put in first.
Okay, that's interesting because it's coming up to middle end of April next month, so that's when I get loads of queries about this. I'd just like an easy way to
Paul, do you like to move on that?
Just to add, if I may.
Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Going through it into the new contract, it is spec that they'll have to have the winning contractor will have to have some kind of interface with the general public. So they'll have to have a website or something. And no, I hadn't thought of an app.
That's
Well,
good. It doesn't have to be an
no,
app. I'm just
but I
thinking
hadn't
more
thought about that, but
people
that's
using
actually
smartphones.
quite a smart way of thinking. It would have an interface with the general public could get hold of.
Yeah.
Keith?
A lot of people report stuff on Fix My Street in Warwickshire, and it has all sorts of things in there, including shopping trolleys in the brook and all those things. At the moment, did the County Council send Paul Daly a list of things?
If it's something that pertains to the Nuneaton Council, the county send it straight through.
To you?
We've got a really good relationship with the County Council officers and or the contact centre and vice versa, because often there's lots of things that are county-based issues that we get told of, and so that interface does work.
Yeah, but it's effectively, the County Council runs Fix My Street, and then they contact centre rings you and say, shopping trolley or bit of fallen tree or whatever.
Yes.
Or, yeah.
Anything else? Just a couple for me then, really. Is, so on there, Paul, you'll be able to know the number of complaints for each ward or whatever, and if it's repeat complaints.
It won't necessarily-
It won't be complaints,
It won't be
which is our
complaint,
scheduling. So with the schedule of grass cutting on high profile areas around town, or it could be, so it is the schedule of when they're due, schedule of when they were last there, and it'll also tell us, how many times.
Right, okay. So the complaint procedure will still go through.
The complaint is still through. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, so you can't link that to that, no?
No.
Not at the moment, no.
Right, okay.
However, it may have a direct correlation.
Well, I was just thinking that if that did have this complaint's come up 6 times this year, that Glendale or whoever is driving past it and they're not picking it up for whatever reason, whether it's not wrote into the contract or they've missed it by mistake or whatever.
With the Glendale Live system, it is very easy to actually, for example, was it Verona Close?
Verona Close
We had a
is
few
a
issues
really
with
good,
that
it's a really
last
good
year.
example, actually.
We've actually put it in as a separate line, so there's 2 lines for Verona Close, and it even identifies, don't forget, house number, da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Orchard Road car park, to be honest.
I know what site you're referring to.
Which one, sorry?
Orchard Road car park, how on earth you drove past it, I don't know, but there you go. Another one was sort of coming in on the back of this is like, so if we send in photos, or say this hasn't been done, this hasn't been done.
We can email it out to the guys,
Ah, right, okay.
because they have email on the phones as well.
Yeah.
So we can actually email it out to them, give them a ring, say, check your emails, there's a photograph, address with it, could you go and make sure so if we've been there earlier in the day, they can catch it on the way back through, so to speak.
Right.
So they can take a photo and send it back.
Yeah. So, the other thing I was going to ask Paul really is you mentioned about weed treating earlier. Not Paul Daly. Are we going around on a quad now?
Yeah.
We are. That's all right. I've blown the county.
County go
County
around
do it as well,
quad,
don't
or they do the street
There's a
edges,
tractor.
like a mini tractor.
Yeah, an orange tractor.
Yeah, somebody was complaining about a quad today going around with liquid on the back. I said, well, that's county's weed treat.
No, it is us.
Right, okay. We'll leave it at
It's
county.
backtrack,
We'll leave it at county. Right. And the other thing I was going to ask Glendale really is, have you got any more new equipment coming up? Because last time you reported on the new equipment that you had coming in and things. So
What we have done this year, we've previously we've run with sort of 3 verge teams, 2 mowers per each area. What we've done this year, we've got an additional verge mower, so we've created one team that does the high profile routes in Bedworth and Nuneaton, as well as the 3 sort of outlying teams. That's an additional piece of equipment on that. Bar that, it's a replacement programme, because we're more or less sort of up to where we want to be. We've got the additional tractor and sidearm, excuse me, and the Amazon machine to collect the environmental areas. I mean, one of the areas, where we pick the complaints up, for the past, way before I started here, we cut and collect somewhere in the region of 1,000 bales of grass off the environmental areas. And the way it's always sort of been done in the past, or certainly from last year, we had a contractor used to come in and cut it and bale it, and we had a local farmer that used to want the silage basically. But last year I think he retired and didn't want it, and as a product as such, nobody wanted that. And that's sort of slowed us right down, because then we had to sort of find someone that would take it. Obviously, we're not just going to put it into landfill. We had to find a green waste site that could take that quantity off us, which we did in the end, but slowed us down. And obviously, as a result of that, we picked the rectification. It wasn't through not doing it. It was trying to find, you know, the pure bulk that sort of comes off that. But what we've done this year, so we've got the kit to do it ourselves. We've got a grain trailer to remove the material quicker. We've got the green waste site at Bulkington that will take it off us. So moving forward this year, that'll be an awful lot quicker. So, as I said, the bits and pieces, but on the whole, it's been the usual sort of replacement of equipment when it's come to a certain age. This has been the first time in probably about 15 years we sort of start grass cutting when you would expect to start grass cutting. And as Paul alluded to earlier, it's given us a really good start to the season. We've got to the end of the shrub pruning cycle that we want to do. All the kit's all fully serviced, repaired and ready to go. And you know, we started back end of last week when we were planning to start Tuesday next week. So, but all the staff's in place and we're ready to go.
All looking good there.
It is. I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, it's nothing down to us. The weather's been in our favour. But as Paul said before, we're actually on the third cycle of spraying, and where that gives us back out. We don't like to strim because of the safety element of strimming in public places. So all the obstacles have all been sprayed out, wall lines and everything else. So, you know, thankfully down to the weather, it gives us a really good start this season.
Julian, did you want to come on?
Can I just have some clarification, please? You said you've got 6 mowers and you've added another one. Is that total 7 mowers?
The verge mowers.
Yeah, thank you.
What we tend to, where we've done in the past, has been 2 per area.
Yeah.
And to try and sort of improve more, we've put the additional mower on to
Reduce what some of the other teams have actually had to do to create that fall through.
The only other thing I wanted to ask about was that mobile cutter. Did you ever use that?
You what, sorry?
Mobile cutter. You can.
remote control.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is it? Well, I know it took off, but. Is that? Don't you use that now? No.
We're looking, but they've just brought out, I went to a demonstration about 3 months ago, they've actually brought out a better version of it.
Right.
We tested it in that area, opposite Attleborough Cemetery, off there, and where the new one, you can actually tether it, and it works far better, so, but we are looking at them at the moment to do our banks.
Okay, well, looking forward to working with Glendale in the coming few months then. Should be interesting. Thanks for the presentation. Integrated performance report.
Okay, Chair.
To you, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The members have got the report before them, so if I just, again, if I can just clarify on page 18, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, there has been no covert surveillance undertaken by the Council in connection with any surveillance operations in the last few months, as reported there. Appendix A takes us through the Strategic Performance Report. You will see that overall, the range of services that are reporting to this particular panel, overall there is we're reporting an underspend, although I will go through that in detail when we come to page 20, but we are sort of within current budget, is what I would say. The performance indicator measure, you will see that 5, that there are in total 9, 5 have improved, 1 stays the same and 3 have declined. We'll pick those up as we go through. And again, I'll take it to the risk register. We have 1 red risk for this particular portfolio, range of portfolio activities. Turning to the budget items, Chair, I'll just highlight them and we'll pick these up when we go through the detail in the report. You'll see that there is an overspend in terms of the parks budget of £13,000, which is highlighted. That is principally down to a number of factors, as Paul will tell you. One is that our fee income for sports pitches is down on what it has been, but in addition there are a number of spend pressures that have arisen principally through insurance claims, which obviously get recharged back to the service. So we'll deal with those in a bit more detail. There are particularly notable significant income increases. Development control, you'll see, is coming in at £239,000. That is, and that I'll deal with in more detail when we come to development control. And perhaps the only other one particularly to highlight at this point is the refuse and cleansing. You'll see there that there is an overspend there of £125,000 against that service, against budget. And I'll deal with the reasons for that when we get to it. I've been given a note from Glenn McGrendel. I wasn't going to say any more than that, Chair. You'll notice I just mentioned cemeteries. For some reason it's not involved, but obviously we are over budget for cemeteries. We did record that at the last panel meeting, and as you'll know, we have from the 1st of March we took some reactive measures to increase fees to reflect the fact that the fees that we've set are not actually recovering the cost of the service, and that's principally the reason for that overspend, that we are well under recovering against the costs of providing the service, so we've had to look at that. That going forward, we would hope to see that addressed, and that would be zero effectively. It would be on budget going forward. I don't know whether members want to ask questions at this stage or whether you want to get into the meat of it and then deal with it separately.
Keith, can't you wait till we go through it all?
I can wait if you want.
Well, we're going through all of this, Chair.
We'll go through it all, because, and then we'll see what's at the end.
So Chair, as I've said, the first item is the parks budget, and it's a frowny face because, of course, we're at £13,000 over budget. There is, as I've said, a number of factors. Principally, I think it was insurance claims and the sporting. I don't think there was anything else.
No, it's fee income is down on sports pitches by several thousands. We've reduced from 100. I'll just give you the meat on the bone there. We've reduced from 2010 100 football teams down to today less than 50. It just gives you the impression that there is a decline in. That's going to obviously be reflected in the income that we generate, and we've had substantial insurance claims this year, upwards of nearly £40,000 in claims for things such as somebody walking along and tripping over a slab in Paul's land, somebody walking up, going on their bike across a piece of grass and falling down a hole in a piece of grass, things that you just cannot legislate against until they manifest themselves. So we've had several this year, several related to trees as well, which has generated the need to fell those trees because they're directly affecting property, and that has had an impact on the budget.
We'll ask questions on each
Yes,
one.
yeah, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, and does anyone got anything on that one? There you go.
There are smileys on the other ones, Chair. So I obviously you've heard about the informal, formal areas and the fact that the informal is under target. There are reasons for that, as Paul's explained, and we are hoping that the measures that have now been put in place will address that going forward. One of the fundamental issues with informal areas in particular, and I know that you've heard this before, is that we have a limited number of measures that we measure the contractor by. If they fail to achieve one, in some cases that immediately knocks them back to 75%. If they fail two, then they're well under. and because it's a cumulative target, once you're down, it's difficult to claw back, even if you perform exceptionally well. So it is something that we are looking at, but the answer to the question, the advice we've given to Glendale is the best way to be on target is don't slip at the beginning, and that way it gives you a better chance of being on target at the end. So they've taken that on board and they've taken that away in order to address those issues, and that's why they've put forward a set of proposals to us on how they intend to avoid infractions of the contractual regime.
Yep.
The moving to car parks, Chair. Again, it's a smiley face in terms of income. Effectively there is still an under recovery, but the under recovery is now becoming what I think would be described as de minimis in terms of the gap. It's now about £10,000 forecast outturn, which is certainly a lot better than it has been. It was significantly more certainly earlier in the year. We are hoping, we'll see, because of course these figures are, I think, from January, so we'll have to see whether the weather has had an adverse impact or not. We'll have to see.
Okay.
On car park, we're doing quite well at the moment relative to a very low base. We've lost the barriers because a waste truck had taken them out, which is actually giving us more parking space in the daytime at the back of the council house. But obviously, but at some point we lose the car park opposite the library, so that will then knock us down. But is that imminent?
The
Church Street.
I don't think it's imminent, Chair. Obviously, there is still some work to be done in terms of bringing forward, because it's part of the Vicarage Street redevelopment project. And as far as I know, there is still some work to be done before that car park is taken out. And I think there will still be some discussion about the timing of that, because of, depending on when it falls, we don't want it to fall in the immediate run up to Christmas, for example. If it's going to run into a period, it would be better to be starting this time next year if it's not ready to start earlier. So there will be that discussion. The other thing I do know, and I think it's been relayed to panel before, is that there is additional capacity or unused capacity in Harefield Road car park, which we would expect would take up some of that. It won't necessarily mean everybody moves across into Harefield Road, but there are some who will, and so we're hoping that will displace some of that. Quite what happens with the post office is another matter, but of course, if that, I guess they'll need to find somewhere to park their vehicles, and we might be able to do a deal with them on that on another car park.
Because there was the issue of getting other spaces, because the Harefield Road is a dreadful for traffic congestion. So the idea of having car parks around the town centre is that people won't go all the way around to Harefield Road if they come into Matterville Way. And there was talk of increasing the capacity on some of the waste ground where the job centre is, or the court.
I can't comment on that. I don't know. That may well be the case. I don't know.
I think one of the other things with our car parks across the borough really is there's no list of other car parks in any of the car parks, is there? So if that car park's full, if you was from out of town, you wouldn't know where else the car park was. Just an observation.
We'll put that in as a suggestion to people.
I'll take that.
If you're coming from Coventry or something,
I might beat you to
No,
that.
it's fair comment. It's fair comment. As you'll see, there is the car park ticket sales, and again, sales are down. We've, as you know, we because of some telemetry issues, we're having to measure it by income rather than by ticket sales, because of the problems that we've had at Harefield Road. So, but even then, it shows that we're still not achieving what we've achieved in previous years by this time. So, it is what it is. But hopefully things will improve with bringing forward some of our development schemes and things like that to regenerate the town centres. Development Control Chair, as you know, the income, I don't quite understand the forecast outturn, but the overall projection is an excess of, I think it's £239,000, so above budget. So I'm not quite sure what that forecast outturn is meant to represent. I'd have to take that back and just check that's not a mistake, because I don't understand it. But you will see that in terms of performance on at the bottom there, that we are taking longer to process planning applications. I'm advised by Ian Powell that the reason for that, and it is a direct correlation, the increased income of £239,000 is relating back to the fact that we've had some huge planning applications coming in, and because they are not routine, simple applications, they are the big majors, multi-sites with significant numbers of dwellings. They take a lot longer to process. They take a lot. There's a lot more consultation that needs to be done with statutory agencies, and therefore that does then have a knock-on effect on the ability to turn them around quickly. So it is a deterioration in timescales, but there is I think a plausible explanation as to why that's happened.
Okay.
I was going to say, the outturn forecast is obviously for 4 quarters, whereas the third quarter outturns for 3 quarters, and the costs, you've got your costs over 4 quarters, so it may very well be that figure's actually correct, because actually a lot of planning applications have been brought forward pre-Christmas into the, so it may be a timing thing. You've got a lot of expense now actually dealing with the planning applications, and actually the more applications we have in the beginning of next financial year, we won't get the income because they've already been paid for, but effectively we've got a lot of applications to determine, so there is an overshoot going to be on the cost of determining them.
I don't know where it's going, Keith. The amount of applications also it's included.
Can I just ask a question? Is there a reason why the directors don't appear on these committees now to give their reports?
Well,
Yes,
the answer to that, Chair, is it's one of expediency. Ian Powell was going to come, but I said as I was coming anyway, because I had a report on there, I would represent him so he can get on and do some work, with it being the last day before Easter.
No reflection on you, Phil.
No. So Ian very happily provided me with a note. So, as I say, he would be here if it hadn't been for me suggesting I'll take this on and deal with it. So.
Okay.
There wasn't a question, was there? No. Right, we can move on. Economic Development Chair. It's neither a smiley nor a frown. It's a straight face. So I guess that just means it's steady state, and we will move on. The environmental protection, again, there is a smiley face for budget. However, there is a deterioration of 1% on performance. Again, just to observe that whilst it is a deterioration of 1% on performance, hence it's a frowny face, the reality is it's still above target of 90%. So there is a slight deterioration, but it is still above target.
okay.
The environmental protection is underspent by 20,000. Does that include air quality? Because we keep having the air quality, I know we're going to disagree on this, but we're not measuring enough of the air quality locations that are affected by development. And some of the new areas where Heath End Road and Raywoods and things, where you put tubes, you've effectively stolen tubes from the other areas to do it. You've turned off the automatic monitoring station. So we keep getting told we haven't got money to do air quality monitoring, when actually we're underspent by 20,000. Is that a correct interpretation?
No.
No.
No. Obviously, in the comments, it does set out that it's effectively savings in transport costs. That will be in terms of recharges for the transport team at the depot, in terms of vehicle maintenance, and also the fact that obviously it's swings and roundabouts. Paul will tell you about transport costs if you wanted to. I suggest you take him to the pub and buy him a drink first, because he had quite a significant transport cost last year, but now that's come down significantly. And it's the same here, that there's been a significant reduction with amongst other things, relocating to the new depot has reduced down the cost of the depot, and therefore the costs associated with the transport team have come down. That's meant that their recharges have come down significantly. And of course the new fleet means that there's less cost associated with vehicle maintenance, certainly at this stage. So though that's generally the reasons for that. There have been some cost pressures, as you'll see, in terms of reduced income from pest control and stray dogs, but that's offset by these other costs. So that's the principal reasons for that.
But is
The air quality
in that
budget
cost
is a
line?
fixed. Is a fixed budget. It will be within environmental protection, but it's obviously not indicating an overspend or an underspend. So it must be on target.
I'm not saying anything about air quality, Keith, but really, county should be doing air quality. It's county that's the transport authority, not us, as you well know. We can do what we can as a borough, but really take that up to county.
If we don't measure it, we can't ask for
I agree,
money.
should it county?
We are the authority that should be measuring it, I believe, and asking for money from developers to mitigate.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Food safety is as is. Everything seems on target and on budget there. Planning policy, there are some vacancies which have recently been filled, I'm pleased to say. Better late than never, I have to add. The borough plan, obviously, as some members will know, especially Councillor Condarker will know, we've now got to the end of stage 2. Obviously there will be some further work that will need to be done now, arising from the discussions that we had with the inspector. We are anticipating having everything submitted to the inspector by the 23rd of April, I think it is, and then the inspector will then decide what then needs to happen next. I think he intimated that we'd be looking to have a report back possibly July time, I think he said. So we'll see what comes. We are hopeful that there will be a report that enables, it will have main modifications. We've agreed main modifications as we've gone along, so we're anticipating that there will be a report that recommends adoption of a plan with these modifications, which, if that happens, as is, it's quite normal for that, we would then go through a statutory 6-week consultation period. Comments would come back to us to go on to the inspector. The inspector would then look at those and decide whether there was any showstoppers in there. If not, then he would then release his final report for, first of all, for us to just fact check, and once we've done that, we would then formally receive the formal report, which we'd then be looking to report to council for adoption. So, with a fair wind, we might get to the end of the year, autumn, winter time, with a recommendation, with a plan that could be adopted. Touch wood.
Good. Keith?
I could talk too much of this, but a couple of questions. A, the new planning policy the government's bringing out may need more consultation on it, and new ways of setting targets. So there's all that issue to consider, and also revising, we've got a sharing group, how many houses each area takes. I understand that's being revised or need to refresh, because obviously there are a lot of student places being built in Coventry. 10,700 student flats in Coventry. So it's not a finished process yet. It's going to have a reiteration. And we have to sort out SIL, because we've got no, and this is going to be, is it planning policy that's going to sort out the SIL issue, because we've got no money to do the 50 million pounds of stuff we need to build in the borough.
Obviously, SIL will be one of the things that will get picked up by the planning policy team. I think priority being what it is, and being understaffed as they have been, they've had to prioritise getting the plan through. Ideally, you'd do the SIL consultation and SIL inquiry at the same time as the local plan inquiry. In this case, it wasn't possible. That will come in due course. Obviously, until we have SIL, we will carry on with our Section 106 planning obligations, which, by and large, as I understand it, are going to be the main source of the income for infrastructure anyway for our borough plan, because of the nature of SIL. It may not be appropriate in the majority of our allocations anyway. Beyond that, obviously, the local planning process, and planning generally, as certainly members who are fairly long in the tooth will know, is an iterative, continuous and never-ending process. No sooner have you finished one plan and you're starting on the next, and certainly the government in their latest proposals and regulations are now requiring us to review our plans every 5 years as a matter of course. Now, that's actually a throwback to many years ago when we were supposed to have local plans in place and refreshed every 5 years. So it's not a surprise that that's there. I have to say the realities of life do get in the way, and it's very rare that a local planning authority has the time, resources and the will in some cases to do that every 5 years, but that's what the government are expecting us to do going forward, so that's what we'll have to do.
Okay.
Refuse and cleansing, Chair, as I reported, is over budget by £150,000, and as you'll see, there's an explanation there. The increased cost of fly tipping, transport costs have been negated partly by recovery of some costs from the county council, and obviously increased salary and agency cover costs, which boils down to a couple of key factors. One is weather. Because of adverse weather and the loss of rounds due to inclement weather, that's necessitated weekend working and obviously additional costs. There's also an issue in terms of sickness absence, which has been a bit of it's a difficult one to manage in refuse and cleansing, because it is the service that you can't run on a shoestring. You can't send a round out without the right number of people to operate for health and safety reasons, and therefore it's necessary to call in at short notice agency workers to fill gaps when they arise, and of course you don't know when they're going to be, and that invariably means that you pay a premium for those particular individuals, and that is the nature of the beast. It's a difficult nut to crack. We are looking at alternatives to try and mitigate that, but that means robbing Peter to pay Paul, so we might be taking drivers, for example, from street cleansing in order to do refuse, so that we can get the big vans out and on the streets. Other than that, it is what it is, and I think we've just been particularly lucky this year, especially with the weather, that we've lost, I think, a number of rounds. Certainly pre-Christmas we had a difficult period, and certainly with the snow it's been quite difficult. Yeah. We are, pleasingly, I have to say, Chair, our recycling is still above target, and the trend is positive, which is good. Quite where we go with recycling, as you know, is going to be a difficult conundrum. We are currently out to tender for a replacement contract, because our contract's come to an end, and it's obviously hitting us at the same time as all of the shenanigans with what to do with recyclables when China in particular has closed its doors, and that's causing, not in all sectors, but in certain aspects of recycling is causing quite a lot of concern in certainly government circles, and obviously in refuse and cleansing in particular. But that's that, Chair. I don't know if there's any questions. Moving then to the risk register, we have there is one red risk on there, which is delays to delivering the borough plan beyond the published timetable. We've kept that as red because, of course, we still have quite a bit of work to do in order to finalise that. There will be some changes. This is the plan as it is currently, but as we have identified that obviously under planned, the second stage examination in public, that will now move up to a mitigation. In that we will have concluded that, and then it's down to plan modifications being the next stage. So the trajectory is positive, but we're not at a point yet until we get a letter from the inspector saying this is a plan I can recommend for adoption. We will not know whether we've got over the bar yet or not.
Keith?
But that's assuming the plan can pass, and obviously one of the elements is we've got a stupidly large target and a very low build rate, and so there's two things that might not pass. The 5-year land supply may not be achievable because the rate of building and the infrastructure of things won't come forward fast enough, or it physically may not be possible to ever get to the target because of the viability of the sites and constraints. So there has to be a point at which something has to change potentially, and I say we may need to review what the target is in terms of what can physically be put within the borough in terms of what's viable.
But on the risk register, it's staying as red.
Yeah, I was just counteracting what Philip said about it could go things on a positive note. I'm just saying that it's not certain that things will go positive.
Well, yeah, but we won't know that until we get there.
I'm just saying, Chair,
That is the stage.
That's where we're at.
That's what we're going through.
Yes.
So,
and if we cross that hurdle, we will.
At the minute, it's staying red.
Yes.
That's it then.
And obviously we will mitigate where we can, depending on what comes back.
We'll deal with it when we come to it.
On page 45, Chair, I was going to say anything else on the risk register, unless members have got anything particularly they want to flag.
Go on, okay.
Just on page 38, it's failure to maintain a vibrant town centre. We keep having these things like the 200,000 being spent on our emergency boost for the town centres. I'm going to say centres with an S, and also things like the bin and things. So there's lots of things in our plans for the town centre, but it's amber stroke high. Are any of those things actually ticking off well or not?
As far as I know, we're progressing with the town centre Wi-Fi, which is part of that contribution, capital contribution. They've now put it in. I don't know when it's going to go live, but they've just about got all the infrastructure in for the town centre Wi-Fi, as I understand it. And in fact, if you go and see where Shirley sits, you'll see it's behind her. The boxes are coming in there, and it's all in. So that's in. The shop jackets are in. I'm trying to think what else was on that list, but as I understand it, we're working a programme for Bedworth Market to spruce that up as part of that, and that is also in train. So things are progressing. I mean, obviously it's taken a little bit longer than we expected to get the Wi-Fi up and running, but that's down to the difficulties of dealing with property owners to get consent to install equipment on their premises and things like that, which has been a bit of an issue. But we're there now, so that's going to happen fairly quickly, I think, now.
And the things down the bottom of the list, like the bid, and the Abbey Street regeneration.
The bid feasibility study, as far as I know, is ongoing. Obviously, it's not being promoted by the council. It's something that is being done by the either the Chamber of Commerce or the Business Partnership. And we're supported. We've part funded that to support that. And as I understand it, they are still working up their proposals. So any more than that, I don't know. But I am aware that they have been doing that and talking with various major retailers in the town centre around what the art of the possible.
So,
Yes, I was just wondering, following on from that, if you could provide an update on the mitigation for a £200,000 budget to improve the town centres and what that's being used for.
I just did. I just
Was that directly just for the Wi-Fi? Or?
But it's Wi-Fi, the jacket, the jackets,
shop from
the and Bedworth Market improvements.
So that comes up to the 700,000 in total.
I couldn't say. I think there are one or two other projects as part of that which are in train as well, which are progressing, but I don't know how far they've gone. If it helps, Chair, I can always ask Jonathan to provide the panel with a briefing.
That'd be great, thank you. I think we all.
To be fair, I was going to ask anyway. Not only on the 200,000, but the £7.5 million grant towards transforming Nuneaton via Coventry, Warwickshire Lab. Grant for one-off public estate towards feasibility studies. It's got bullet points here of what's happening, but not much information. So if somebody was to ask, I wouldn't be able to give them a full answer.
Well, obviously these are just headlines of mitigation controls.
Yeah, okay. For an instance, I've had an email today asking me about the £7.5 million for our Connos, right? Can you? If you had an email, would you be able to answer it?
Depends what the question is, Chair.
What's it getting spent on?
I don't know, Chair.
I don't know exactly.
That's not strictly true. I do know, but I don't know what I can tell in the public domain.
Yeah, okay.
But there are, if I could just say, Chair, that the project is progressing. There are some detailed discussions going on with the County Council. Just to be clear, the £7.5 million isn't our money. It's LEP money that's been given to the County Council. So we are partners in the Vicarage Street project, which is primarily where that money will be targeted. Primarily, not entirely, but primarily.
All I'm saying, Phil, is there's a nice list there saying things, nice things, but nobody knows about them.
Not publicly, no. Not at this stage. I understand. I can understand. As I understand it, Chair, there are certain commercial sensitivities around some of the aspects of these projects. They are big projects, and there are a number of negotiations and discussions going on with landowners and others. So I think that's probably why it's being kept under wraps at the moment. But I think once the deal is done, once all the components are in place and we are at a point where we can inform the public exactly what is happening, I think that will most definitely happen.
Just a minute, Keith.
Just on that, the planning inspector asked the same question, and there was going to be a briefing note for the borough plan on the transforming the Nuneaton project. So,
well, the other thing was, I know it's not on here now, but we lost that £350,000 because there wasn't enough interest in building flats above shops and things. And then we hear that Coventry are having all these student things. Both Nuneaton and Bedworth are, 10 minutes away on the train. Do we not try and sell that to Coventry, or do we not try and sell that to the people that own these buildings? It just, I get a very blank answer when I ask why they pulled out. They pulled out because there wasn't enough interest off the owners. Well, I don't think that we sold the borough enough then.
I can't comment on
No, I'm just saying
but
that it's 10,000 student homes going up in Coventry. We'll have some of them. the town centres. That'll make them vibrant.
Or Chinese.
Yeah, well, Chinese, whatever. Okay, should we move on?
That was the, unless there's anything else on the risk register, Chair.
Anything for anybody on the risk register? No?
No, in which case, Chair, I'll just take you to page 45, and that gives you the strategic performance report summary up to January, but it's as of the end of December, so it's 31st of December. There's a sort of calendar year outturn report so far, but with another 3 months to add to that, which will, obviously we're at the end of the financial year as of next Sunday, Monday, we will, although technically I suppose it's the 6th of April, but we work to the 1st. We will bring to the next meeting, I think it is the end of year full year outturn report. You'll see that the revenue forecast outturn for the general fund is showing a positive trend of £123,000. The HRA revenue outturn is even more positive, although it's a downward trend because it's less, but slightly, but it's £825,000 there. There are some comments there that outline the reasons for that, and it may well be, I think, a privy to a discussion that we will need to look at the profiling of particularly the HRA, because we are finding that because we're working more effectively, we are achieving more. So that's actually a positive thing. It does then mean that there is some capacity within the HRA to consider what we do with that.
On that £825,000, it'd be nice that the HRA actually had a bit of money for the odd tree, as they've actually taken a lot of trees out as part of there. And obviously, the council's got two budgets. It's got the general budget and the HRA budget. And sometimes I think the HRA budget doesn't actually try and improve the environment around some of our complexes.
I'll ask Paul to take that away to discuss with Dawn, and we'll relay the response.
She's got almost £1 million, so if you could steal a little bit.
You'll see, Chair, sundry debt collection is down, and this is something that we are keeping a close eye on. We think that is, there's a bit of a national trend, as you know, in terms of the separation between inflation and wage increases, although I understand, I'm aware the gap is narrowing again, but because of those difficulties that people have had, it has impacted, and invariably that means that we have to work harder to get the money in. The business rate collection is also showing a positive trend. We're just slightly below the target, but moving in the right direction. So I'm guessing that there will be a last minute push towards the end of the year. Some businesses do like to hold on to their cash for as long as possible, but have to pay up eventually because they know what will happen if they don't.
On that, like the Maplins and various things going under, is that having much of an effect on us?
It's a national effect. It will have some impact eventually. It hasn't yet, but it will. It won't reflect in here because, of course, it hasn't happened yet. But
well, I didn't know whether they were behind with their payments or...
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Well, it won't reflect, it won't reflect in the business rate collection, will it? Because if there's less businesses, you won't have to collect so much.
Well, except it's a hereditary that is on our register, so of course it will then it'll go to zero. It'll be zero rated for 3 months, and then it'll then start to run into really. But you'd then expect the landowner to have to pay for that. I suppose the only other thing to flag, Chair, is the position on sickness absence. There is a slight deterioration in terms of the long-term sickness absence. Short term is still holding up, but overall, we are still ahead of the game compared to last year, and we think we're well on target to achieve our well, not that we want to achieve it, we want to always underachieve it, but that we're going to have less sickness absence than we had last year, significantly so. And I think, Chair, I don't think there's anything else particularly to find at this stage.
So unless everyone's got any questions, Phil?
We haven't played 48 yet?
That's just a commentary to, so if, I was going to go through the commentary, Chair, but if there's anything that...
So just one question on that, the depot, it says in here pending the waste licence, expected end of January. Well, that hasn't happened. Second Amber.
Yes, yeah. I'll just check the note from Glenn McGrandle. I think he's picked that up. I think he looked at the performance report itself. I don't think there's any information about where we are with the waste licence. It's something, Chair, I think all I can offer is again, I will ask the question and get a note to members to update.
Just ask him to email us with where we are with that.
Yeah.
Where we are and when it's expected to happen.
Yeah. Yes, but we'll obviously need to just, if we haven't already, I'll see what we're recalibrating that to as well, because clearly it's well beyond the end of January now. So if there's a time frame, we need to know what that time frame is.
And there's a risk because we may not actually get a waste permit for all the things we want.
Yeah, that could very well be the case. I don't know.
Okay. Right. So next is over Shirley. Oh, we're going to go. Yeah, okay. But yeah, we can go through the freedom of information. Does anybody wants anything on the freedom of information?
Hang on.
No.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Complaints outside of 10-day responses, is anybody got anything on that? Freedom of information, I'm asking about, see, I've got to all that work, I actually found out what the completed, the ones that weren't completed, I found out what there was, because all you got on there is a reference number. I've actually found out what they were as well, just in case anybody has any burning questions about it.
Well, if we know what they are, we would have a question. It being called MBC F123841641.
Right, well, I will run through because I thought it was interesting anyway. So the first one with no date by it was lots of beggars in the town. The other one was condition of the public toilets in Bedworth. The next one down was bullied.
At the market.
Bullied at market. There's somebody at the market, not Bedworth market, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bedworth market thought he was being bullied. The next one down was non-domestic rapes. Then we had damage of carriage by workmen.
This is a waste of time.
Non-response to emails. These are the ones going down, the ones that have got no date by them. So these are the sort of things that
Is this on the freedom of information?
No, this is on, nobody had anything on the freedom of information. This is on the complaints outside of 10 days.
So I'm a bit unsure about what we should be doing with this. I mean, you can read out what the complaint was, but I don't know anything about it, so...
That's more information to be put on it, because all you've got
72 days.
is a reference number, which is of no use at all. So they've asked for some information to be put on the site to tell you what the complaint was about.
Yeah.
It must have been pretty major for it to take 172 days to complete, you know.
And this is the point why we've asked for an extra column to be put on, so that you can see what the complaint is about, and then you can challenge that service department to why it's taken 143 days, 130 days, or whatever.
That's why I would have liked the directors here to be able to answer those.
Hopefully the next report that you get will have the information on for you, so you can see, just in a very brief summary, what they were actually complaining about.
That would be helpful.
And then if there are any I mean, some of them are going to take a long time to evaluate, I suppose, and investigate, and others won't. So it'll be for you to decide whether you think that amount of time is feasible given the issue.
Type of complaint.
I'm still confused as to why we've got this. I mean, has this come before us before? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
This came from a working group that was asked to be set up for about freedoms of information and complaints, because there was a working group set up looking into what happened to them when us as councillors or the public go on the council website and put in a complaint. All we was getting was a reference number, and that's what we asked for all of these to come to each scrutiny to see if any scrutiny owned them, so that they could take it up with the director or the service department. So these have been coming all year now. But at the minute, there's still not enough detail there, because all it gives you is a reference number, which is pretty pointless.
The idea, I think, really was that some of these we can get in trouble with the ombudsman if we don't deal with them within the set period of time, and some of them are taking a very long period of time, and so it identifies which departments are responsible for those particular queries, and it's entirely up to you whether you think that you want to question the department as to why are you taking so long, or whether you think that it's acceptable. I don't know. That was why the working group said that they thought these reports should come to each OSP. But like you, Councillor Copland, we've sat through several of these meetings now, and people aren't really sure why they're coming and what they should be doing with them. Whereas the economic OSP has the officer come, and she has to report to them about the freedom of information and the complaints, and they can then actually have that conversation with her in that meeting, which will be at the next meeting next week. But in some respects, for you getting this, I'm not sure that it's actually helpful. It was just that the working group thought it would be, but after this year, I'm not sure that it is, and we can remove it if we think it isn't. And you can leave it to economic. I don't mind.
I think quite seriously we need to know what's going on, but to get pages like this, I think it's just not worth the paper it's written on, quite honestly. I do feel this committee should really be aware of it. So either the officer who comes to see the economic OSP should really report to this one. If they're going to put it to us in this form, then we must have some reason. You know, we must have some understanding of it.
Like I say, I've asked for it to be changed, so that you do get more information.
But what will you do with it when you've got more information?
Well, scrutiny's going to change anyway soon, isn't it? So everything will change soon. So, anyway. So if we might have gone to the next item on the agenda really, which is use of sky lanterns on the council owned land, which is presented by Shirley.
Yes, the reason I've done this report, Chair, is because there wasn't really anybody else to do it. It's not something that we would have somebody in our department responsible for, other than you'll see from the recommendations, and my recommendations are taken purely here from what other authorities have done. You can accept them or not, obviously, as you choose, but these are, I've just made the case as other authorities and other bodies have made, and those recommendations put before you are ones that have been to other authorities. There are currently about, the sky lanterns have been banned in approximately 50 other local authorities. They're every local authority in Wales now has banned the use of them. You'll see from the report that I think Warwickshire County Council banned them back in 2014. The Farmers Union, the Fire Officers Association, the Marine Conservation Society, the RSPCA and the Aviation Authority have all given their reasons for why these should be banned. So I've really presented the information in the report and will leave it to you.
Okay. Bob?
Well, I'm more than happy to go along with a ban on these, and well, where we can, because obviously somebody doing one from the back garden, I'm sure we can't. Or maybe we could, if it was a council house, we could be in that position where we can say you can't do it from your back garden at the council house, but you can, but what could be a bit. But I'm happy. I mean, when you look at the information here about the £6 million of damage and the caravan's gone, the other comment I would make, I can remember being at a wedding quite a few years ago now, where that was all happening, and I thought to myself, how boring is this? All these things flying away. And I thought, what is this all about? And mine, I'm not guilty, because mine didn't actually take off. But I just think the phrase they use nowadays, this is so last year, doing things like that. But I'm quite happy on the evidence I've got before me, and I've no reason to doubt it. I'm sure it's right, because you can see how it can happen. But to go along with a ban, yeah. But I'm not sure they're actually something that happens nowadays, or have I not? I'm not getting invited to the correct events now.
Just to put something else in it, is that most councils are not only doing sky lanterns, they're doing sky lanterns stroke balloons. So where do you want to draw the line? That's what I'm saying.
I would include fireworks in that as well.
Well, you know, I understand about the damage it can do, but then they come in with the same argument with balloons, and they're banning balloons as well. And with a shrinking council, how are we going to police this?
Well, that's the other thing.
I mean, I'm happy to go along with it, but are we going to have sky lanterns and balloons, or are we just having sky lanterns? Keith?
I would go sky lanterns and balloons in areas where the balloons will go onto agricultural land, because the big problem with the balloons is them getting eaten by sheep and things like that. And also in terms of the recommendations, I think if we have got planning applications for wedding venues or whatever, to try and actually put some policy in so that we can actually have conditions on them not being a nuisance. I mean, like a place like Bulkington, you're surrounded by farmland at the moment, and anything taking off from Bulkington will land onto fields with sheep and cows and things. So
you're going to go to Western Hall and tell them they can't let balloons or sky lanterns off?
if we could, I would. And I get annoyed by the Tories and the Labour people.
I just think that we're on a sticky wicket there, that's all I'm saying.
You can't do it for private property.
Exactly.
No.
We're
Only
not
for
going to
council owned land, and what you're doing, you would be saying this is what the council says.
But there's also making people aware that balloons let off in the wrong place will fall onto farmers' fields and kill a sheep or whatever. So it is a real issue, and we need to look after the environment and not pollute it with all sorts of foreign matter. We've even got people losing drones all over the place, but at least they just sort of plonk down and don't get eaten.
Well, I think you're right.
Julian, did you want to say
Yeah.
something?
I support the recommendation, and I think we ought to ban the scan up the sky lanterns. I've had first-hand experiences on farms with what they've done. You know, they've landed down in the grass, they've combined it, and it's gone through, then they fed it to cattle and killed the cattle. And I fully support that. But going on to private property, I don't think we've got a chance of banning it. And Mr Condecourt, I believe there's green land in Weddington that they could let sky lanterns and balloons on, not only bulky too.
So this is just a second. Just to confirm then, this is we're only asking this to be done on council-owned property, but we're not going as far as council houses. Or
There
are
is
we?
no, at 2.3 it says the council's tenants and contractors are made aware of the ban. You cannot have that in if you want to take it out.
So we're going to have to rewrite the policy on
The tenancy.
tenancy.
Well, you'd have to add a bit in, I suppose, yeah.
You'd have to, surely you could put some sort of clause in where, again, if anything happens in a farm, any accidents or whatever, that private concern, that pub, that restaurant or whatever, are responsible. I mean, they must take out additional insurance and whatever to cover incidents that could happen.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
But that's,
I wouldn't imagine so. We can check. Margaret.
Thanks, Chair. It's just more in the way of a general comment in terms of, making people aware of, I mean, I'm staggered at the list of things that have happened, regarding the use of the lanterns in particular. And I think, so a voluntary ban has got no teeth, but you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? And I think it's a way of perhaps making people aware of the damage that can be done, and that maybe eventually in the fullness of time there will be legislation about this. It depends what the feel of things is. But in terms of us doing it, I think it is a way of making people aware of the staggering amount of damage that can be done with these.
Okay, so where are we going with this? Are we saying sky lanterns and balloons?
I say just sky lanterns.
I've no real feeling against sheep, but it is the effect of balloons, I think, is a little more restricting than the effect of sky lanterns.
Sorry, Chair. And we can say with fly tipping, chucking the stuff over the hedges to infect the animals. I think we go on this first job with the sky lanterns, and then wait and let's take one step at a time.
Keith?
As a compromise, it is possible to actually add balloons to the awareness thing of 2.5, but not add it to the other paragraphs. Because actually, at 2.5, you're actually raising awareness of the issue rather than actually having any ban.
Who was on with that?
I'm happy with that. Is everybody else happy with that?
Yeah.
Do you want to see 2.3?
2.3, the council's tenants and contractors made aware of the ban.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Keith. So keep 2.3 in. Awareness, balloons on the awareness. Alright, is everybody happy with that then? Just step forward. Forward plan. 74.
just there for information, Chair, if anybody's got any queries. I have to say, we just, I think Wendy's just sent out a new one today.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So there is an updated version on the web, and there was a couple of things added to it.
Anything added to it short? Anything added to it for April or longer term?
No, longer term. Well, neither of them were April, were they? I think they were June.
The two things that I added in development of veterans clubs, which was May, and then the ground maintenance contract is July.
Chair, if I may, we've just had the government finally announce they're looking at a bottle deposit scheme, and so I hope the awarding of the recycling contract at least has sort of thought of that.
Yeah, I shared it last night. Okay, so the other thing, the last thing for tonight is the work programme.
Well, Chair, you've completed the work programme, except for the borough plan, which you heard earlier from Phil, but you may have it in the coming year again. And also the grounds maintenance contract renewal, which you've just heard is on the forward plan for July. And then the only other thing was the 5-year land supply target. Well, obviously, until you can look at that sometime in the coming year, if you still wish to do that.
Well, that'll be brought into the borough plan anyway, won't it? So,
before the borough plan, presumably.
Keith?
Yeah, the 5-year land supply, there is some work being done, I believe, with Coventry and the other authorities, because obviously lots of things have changed since it was originally divvied up the housing, so I think it will come up at some point in July, September.
We'll keep it there, so that's not good anyway. Right, the only other thing for me to say is thank you for your support throughout the year, and that's the last one.
And thanks to the officers.
Thank you.
Well, we'll just thank you. I was thanking everybody around here. Right, thanks very much, and good night.
And have a happy Easter.
Oh yeah? Yeah, happy Easter.